How are you doing navigating the dark these days? Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. And some of you would ask, what are you talking about? What is that dark you're speaking of? Dear ones, for many, many years, I've told you to expect a battle. And it's not the kind of a battle that Earth really, truly has ever seen. Not like this one. What we speak of is old consciousness versus an awakening consciousness. You might even say old consciousness versus that which is starting to be ascended consciousness. We've given you an axiom that says it's almost impossible for a darker vibration or consciousness to look up to a higher one and recognize that it's higher. It comes into that axiom also, we have said, that a fool does not know they're a fool. And so even those who are perpetrating a darker consciousness onto you are not even aware of it, because it becomes habit. Not conspiracy, dear ones, habit. So how are you doing with awakening in a darker energy that's habitually giving you the old ways for you to look at? And you might say, well, I still don't know what you're talking about, Kryon. Let me ask you, right now, as you sit there, are you aware of the polarization of almost every subject that you have right now? And I'm not just talking about political. I'm talking about almost everything else that has happened in these last few years. It just seems that there are them and they are you. And the polarization has to do with the lack of tolerance. Ask yourself right now, with what you believe and what you hold dear to be your truth, right now, you know what that is. Now imagine for a moment that you are told that someone perhaps famous doesn't believe what you believe. And it doesn't matter whether it's political or anything else. It can be any number of subjects that they don't necessarily believe what you believe. Let me ask you right now, how do you feel about that person? There is something happening that's habitual on this planet that is very dark. Most people would say, well, I don't want to associate that person with me because they don't believe what I believe. I don't want to even look at them. I don't care what they have done. I don't even want to know perhaps if they're a loving person or not a loving person. Or, in other words, there is no filter that allows you to tolerate a person that doesn't believe what you believe. What if they're beautiful inside? What if they are actually one who is working on ascension and mastery for themselves? What if they know how to love? And the answer is, you're not even looking at that. You don't want to look at that. This is the polarization, the darkness that I'm talking about, that becomes worse and worse as time goes forward. The only thing that's going to correct that, dear ones, is going to be you in a tolerant mode toward all that is for others. But there's so much more. What if I told you that there was an actual agenda, not necessarily a conspiracy, but an agenda to keep things the way they used to be on the planet in a very old energy? And you would say, well, show me an example. And I will, right now. Besides the polarization that's going on, that keeps you in your bubble of belief and doesn't let you even tolerate anyone else who doesn't believe you, that's one agenda. The other agenda is to give you only things that are fearful. So truly, if there were two sides of a story, whatever it was, you're only given the fearful side. And what this does for you, not much, is to only give you things to be afraid of. The result is fear. What have I told you about fear that you need to know? You really need to know. When you're in fear, your light is completely covered up. There is no light. There is no light when you're in fear. You know that. Have any of you felt shut out of the light lately? Have any of you felt perhaps, I want to know more about this love that you speak of, Kryon, and the peace that is mine, but I'm having trouble with that. The reason you're having trouble with that is you're listening to those who are giving you fear. This is what I want to share with you. There are those invested in keeping you in a darker energy, mainly for money. This is how it's worked in the past. You frighten the public, they do what they always do when you frighten the public, and they do that on and on in their habit. So you then have convinced them of something that you want that is actually of a darker energy. Let me take you back a few years, at the beginning of what you call the COVID time. How many of you remember those early days? This is the example I want to set for you. It's an example we've shown you before, but we want you to truly look at it. Look at it. When COVID came along, it was a frightening time. It was a sad time. There were so many who passed in a year or so. And there was much grief and sorrow. In a time of emergency, you normally find humans gathering together and finding something in common to work with it. There's also this hope that occurs, even in times of trouble. Almost every time this planet has had these kinds of things happen, you come together. COVID did not bring anyone together. In fact, it pushed you apart. But I want you to remember the early days of this pandemic when you were glued to your media, perhaps as you should be, to see what is happening, what you can do to make things better, what you can do to avoid the virus. All of these things you needed to know. And there is the public glued to the media. Now let me show you what the media decided to give you. And this is where I look at habit, at dark energy, and older energy, what used to work instead of what could work. The media had decided altogether, on their own, without conspiracy, not to include anything hopeful. I want to remind you what you got to see, the statistics. You got to see who got infected, how many were infected, how many went to the hospital, and the death rate. That's what you were given. Do you remember those days? I hope you do, because there was something missing, something that the media could have given you, a number of things that they could have told you that would give you peaceful hope at a time when you needed it more than any time, perhaps even since you've been born. And they chose not to. Were you aware that more people came out of the hospital than went in? It was not a death sentence to go to the hospital with COVID or even be in a respirator with COVID. Go and take a look at that now today. Did you know there were hospitals giving parties for those who would then recover and come out and meet the family and go through the quarantine time? More people survived the hospital experience than died there. Were you ever told that? Was there ever a recovery line in the chart? Or was there only infected and death? This is an old, dark energy. That's the commercialism to keep you watching, because when you are in fear, they've got you. There's no light when there is no hope, dear ones. How are you dealing with that today? Are you recognizing the same kind of thing today? And that same kind of thing says, if they're not on your side, don't go there. No tolerance, no compassion. If they don't believe what you believe, therefore, they're a non-persona. And this is what you're being slowly shown and taught, dear ones. How are you dealing with that? Do you even recognize it's there? A compassionate, ascended light worker on the path to mastery can see it so clearly. What is happening, what they're telling you, what that programming would say, have no tolerance, have no compassion, just stay in your own corner. That's old, that's ugly, that's black as it gets, and that has no hope. No hope at all. Dear ones, I give you this, and again I'm asking, do you see it? Do you recognize it for what it is? Anyone who wants to discover the God inside understands that the Creator is in love with all humanity, unconditionally. If you want to practice it, you want to picture something you truly don't believe in and don't want for yourself, and go there for a moment and say, is there love there too? Can you tolerate those who don't believe what you believe? These are the new kinds of exercises for a time that is a battle for your fear. It's a battle for light and dark on the planet. I'm telling you that there are more who are awakening to this and turning off the media because they realize what the agenda is, what the old energy wants, truly. They want you to tune in and be afraid. How are you doing with that? These are the questions of studying mastery today, and they're difficult ones, aren't they? The light worker is in charge of light and hope. We ask you to understand this so clearly that you will see it and become more tolerant for all things around you, at the same time keeping all the things you believe intact. That's a master. That's who you are. I'm crying in love with humanity and all that is happening here right now. And so it is. If you enjoyed this channeling, you might also enjoy the weekly program It Came From, Wednesdays with Kryon, heartfelt 90-minute program with more of what you've just experienced. Why not join us?